Everyone, welcome to our webinar this morning, Understanding Event Technology Partnerships and Expectations. My name is Maggie Bliss, and I will be your moderator today. I am very excited to be joined by our Senior Product Marketer, Justin McKethy, and our guest expert today, Tess Vismale. She's a CMP, a DES, co-host of the podcast Event Tech Pull-Up, Chief Event Executioner and Event Technologist for iSocial Execution. Thank you both for being here today. We're so excited. So before we get started with the conversation, there's a few housekeeping items I'd like to go over. So first, we are using BlueJeans events, which means you're in a one-way viewing experience, but you can still interact with us. So please tell us where you're joining from in the chat, as Tess just pointed out, and asked. Please put your questions in the Q&A chat feature, and then there's a little icon on the right-hand side, and it will say moderator chat feature. If you guys have any technical issues or need to address something on the side, please use that chat feature to talk to me. Lastly, this session will be recorded and I will send it to every single one of you afterwards. And with that, I will pass it off to Justin and Tess.
All right. Thank you so much, Maggie. Thank you, everyone, as well, for joining us. We've got a bunch of folks chiming in from Philadelphia, from New Jersey, from the Atlanta area, from Tampa, Florida, Steve in Indianapolis. Great to see everybody here right now. And Tess, hello to you. I'm so happy to get to talk to you today. And I think we'll launch right into this first question that we've had prepared. But I do want to encourage everybody, please use the Q&A, use the chat. We'll address those as they come up as well. So, Tess, as we launch in here, would love to hear your perspective. What defines an event partnership rather than a transactional relationship?
Okay, well, thank you, Justin, for having me, and thank you, BlueJeans, for pulling this together, because I think it is wonderful for us as event pros to kind of talk about the things that go on within partnerships, just how we do things, especially post-COVID, because what has happened is we know how we used to do work, as being an anal event professional planner and professional for many years. We wanted things certain kinds of ways, right? And we built our partnerships a certain type of way. We did business the way that we used to and felt comfortable with. But then when COVID hit, everything became uncomfortable. Everything became totally, totally different, right? So now we have to, reimagine. But before we reimagine, my favorite term that I kind of borrowed from a friend of mine is respecting the pause. So we want to respect the pause. We want to stop and look at how our relationships need to be going forward. I need to lean more into my tech partners than I used to have to before for my clients, and as well as the clients, if you will, right? Those end users, meaning those end stakeholders, need to look differently on how they are building relationships with event tech companies as well. What does partnership look like? You have to define it. And the biggest way that you can define it is you need to communicate. I think in the beginning, you need to say, hey, if I need to do business with you, what does that look like? What are good communication channels, right? How can we best get in touch with each other? Who from my team is going to be a part of that particular relationship that we're building, so that we're going into it from that perspective? And then say, hey, what works and what doesn't work? We just said, that's great. This is nice. People like to say, we're the best, we're the greatest, we all do all these things. No, but that's not true. We need to define what doesn't work so that we can level the playing field and have an opportunity to meet at a certain point and say, this is going to be a true partnership. So to answer your question, Justin, I think it's loaded, but I think if you start on the high level around pausing and deciding what you need, choosing people who can deliver what you think you need, and then communicating from that standpoint, then move on to building that relationship.
Great thoughts. Yeah, and I couldn't agree more. It's one of those really interesting kind of dynamics socially, because it's a symbiotic relationship. It's the success of the event vendor and the success of the end customer rely on each other completely. There's no way that event is going to go off without a hitch. It's going to be successful. You're going to reach the audience that you want to from concept to launch, unless there's communication, like you put it. And so, I do love that aspect of the fact that, no, it's not meant to be solely a transactional relationship, but it is a partnership, because at the end of the day, if the event vendor did a good job and the customer did a good job together, it's like rising tide lifts all ships kind of a thing. So I definitely enjoy that part of it.
So Justin, let's take a look at the polls that we put together, because I think that it also should drive the conversation and the dialogue about it. Shouldn't just be around kind of what I think partnerships can be. And I just kind of want to get a sense for what the audience really thinks. So let's drive them over there.
You bet. And that poll is, have you been frustrated with your relationship with an event tech company? That's the poll that Tess put together for this. So please answer that, and we'll address some of the results there.
Yeah. So if you ask me what makes a good relationship, I have to identify in that communication piece what frustrates me, right? I got to put it on the table. Because some people, we don't think about bringing that to the table when we have to build it. And we don't necessarily think about the roles that are involved in building the relationship. We just think it's kind of, like you said, transactional. I got this service. Yes, I can do it for you. Give me the money and let's move on. But what are the steps along the way? Why do people think the customer success role exists, right? It's for success, separate from sales, right? Separate from a project manager, right? If you will. So why are those roles existing, and who are going to be in those roles to help mitigate what those things are? But if I've had a bad experience from my last tech partner, I'll probably bring those preconceived notions to this new relationship. And if I don't tell you about it, or I don't try to come to consensus on how we can best do better and listen to your end on what experiences you had, even on the flip side, from other event professionals or other event planners, if you will, who come to the table to plan an event and you've had some strife, then I won't know what to do better, right?
Yeah, great points. And I think, too, if we read out the data here, 73% have had a frustrating experience with an event tech company, 27% have not. So that speaks a lot. And I think, too, historically, to your point about how if you had a relationship in the past or experience in the past that didn't meet your expectations, you're obviously going to go into a new vendor relationship with, well, more education for sure, and more opportunity to remedy what went wrong. And a lot of that is contingent on the vendor's part, but it is also an experiential thing that the customer gets to say, hey, you know what? We're not going to do that again. And we're going to find somebody that actually will meet us where we want to meet them.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you think about it, let's go on to the next one too as well, where I'm about to tee this one up. But when you think about it, people usually have a tendency of putting to bed with the debrief all of the survey results. They take a little bit into account for the next event, but they don't really talk about the relationship aspect of what might have gone better. And then taking that to the next vendor or to the same vendor and saying, hey, what can we do better around this? What do you recommend that I need to do with my staff? And then what I can recommend, and have that open conversation, what I think you may be able to do with your staff. And then maybe you can say, you know what, Tess, I don't have that as a capacity. You have no idea how many of my fellow event professionals who assumed post-COVID, as I say March, that the event tech companies were supposed to do all of their project management for them.
Mm-hmm.
Right? All of it. Like
mm-hmm.
I have a tool, not that it's a tool and a resource, right? It's kind of like they forgot that, or didn't think about, I should say, that your event platform is your real estate. It's where you're just putting your content. So just like you go into a ballroom, it's an empty ballroom. So you got to do something. So there's staff, right, that puts the chairs in there and puts everything in there. There are other roles that go into that. And I think that could be a part of some of the frustration that we might have seen in that 73%, is because those roles, people were kind of being reactionary and didn't really think about what it took to make it happen. And so I think it's kind of on both ends.
I think it speaks volumes to the way that folks answered the first poll and the way that they are answering the second poll in terms of frustration regarding event strategists and events agencies. 67% said no, they were not frustrated, while 33% said yes, they have been frustrated. In other words, if you call on some planner, some agency that is devoted to making sure end-to-end the entire thing is flawless, is crystal clear, the whole nine, I don't think it's not that surprising that folks have had a way better experience. So I guess in your industry that lines up pretty well, Tess.
Yeah, it does. And I was talking to a client actually earlier this morning about what I call that stopgap, right? And that's that place where if the event tech is the tool that does it for you, that doesn't mean they have the manpower that's going to build it for you. But then there are also professionals, production companies, event professionals who do that all day long and can help you with that process. But that stopgap in between was assumed that those roles came along with purchasing the technology, to make the event a success. So that makes plenty of sense. And I'm glad to see the numbers shifting and changing.
Yeah, it's good stuff. Before we go to that next poll, a quick call out to Steve, who in the comment box, I just asked any thoughts about partnership tips and things like that. Steve says, taking the time to get a clear spec sheet of what is being requested and delivered and helpful in getting off to a good start. Couldn't agree more. Get it documented. What exactly do you need in the entire event process? And then also, the honest post-event debrief is the only way to learn how to improve things for the next time. That is from Steve as well.
Absolutely.
Yep, you'll improve future events if you analyze what just happened, no question.
Absolutely, absolutely. And thank you, Steve, for responding, and Angela. I love the interaction there, and definitely make sure that you take time to put some things in the chat. And if you have questions for either of us, please let us know as well.
What do you think? How about we ask Maggie to push the next poll out there, but while we get the data back from that, here's a question for you, Tess.
Okay.
How do you define roles during the RFP process? You've touched on this a little bit, but how do you do that so it sets yourself up and ultimately for event success, which at the end of the day strengthens the partnership?
Oh, wow. It's always a loaded question, I think, because now people are looking for tools faster and quicker. But I think if you don't, as a team internally, again, respecting that pause, and say, hey, who are the stakeholders who need to be the decision makers? How am I going to pull them with what their needs are? What are their have-to-haves, right? What are their, okay, it would be nice to have, and then that's not important. But then when you think about it, who is going to be the lead in capturing all the information and the data across the organization, whether it's a small organization or a large organization, right? And then who is going to communicate to go search and select, if you will, as one of my famous event professionals, Ashanti from Event Mind says, search and select, which I love that term, is who's going to search and select it for you? Who's going to go out and look through the over 200 tech companies out there who say that they do virtual events, may not, right? Who's going to do all of that for you? Then comb the information, make the appointments, talk to the tech companies, get all the information back from them, culminate all of that into a digestible way so that then as you're talking to the tech companies, they can have clear information, right, as to what you want, pull all of that out, possibly negotiate, maybe not, then go back and say, all right, committee, team, whomever, team of one, now what do I do, right? So you have to comb out, look at the end result. I don't think enough of my fellow planners think about the process of getting tech the same way as the process of getting any other vendor, right? If I go and look and do an RFP process for a hotel, if I do an RFP process for a new AV vendor, or if I do an RFP process for a lending company, whatever, I know what my end result needs to be, and I start from the end forward. But you need to do that as well, and think about all the roles that have to go into those things. So you definitely need someone who's going to negotiate, someone who can comb information, someone who can look at the data pretty easily, someone who can build and has good relationships, hopefully already with tech companies, or someone among your staff who can build that relationship with them so they can be responsive.
Makes a lot of sense. Yeah, having solution knowledge and a little bit of industry knowledge, I think, goes a long way. Whether as the customer you're calling on the support arm of the event vendor, or you're calling on the support arm of a third-party agency to help you with the event production. I mean, in either case, know who does what and how they're going to best assist you during the live presentation.
So can I pause for a second? And I want to throw it back on you and your team and what you know of Blue Jeans. Now Verizon is taking over in a sense, but you're still Blue Jeans as a brand. But from your perspective, how are you receiving, you all or your colleagues receiving that information? And what would be good relationships for you from your perspective as well? And then what roles do you see would be helpful in that journey to get to a solution?
Absolutely. I think that it's important for the business that is providing the event solution to understand every single need in the customer journey. And that is a lot easier said than done. But on the marketing side, all of that translates into how we advertise our company, how we message for our products and services. And so if we've got a better pulse on what it is the customer needs for, say, a large-scale video production, a large-scale streaming presentation, we understand who to put them in touch with on the Event Assist side, who to put them in touch with support. I think it's also incumbent on the customer at times, understand what the sales rep is capable of versus what CS, customer success, is capable of. You mentioned that, and then versus what that entire assistance leg of the company is capable of. And so it all boils down to communication. And every time some large scale presentation that's referenceable from Blue Jeans, we're able to write a case study about it, that comes up, we learn a heck of a lot when we do those customer interviews, just about tell us every stage of the process, what did you have in mind, and how did it actually get executed? And then it really helps us, I think, from a customer standpoint, dictate what's going to work best for everybody.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
And most tech companies don't like to hear this from me, but when I like to talk to tech companies, I don't want to talk to the salesperson. I need to talk to the person who knows the tech and who can answer the questions and get down to the nitty gritty, right? And then answer my questions as it relates to what I really need. And then I can go back to the salesperson to give them the business. But let me get to the answers first. It's almost like the journey should be a little different, right? I need to get to the answers first, get to the meat, and then come back and say, here's a check.
Yeah, good point. And to the roles poll that you requested here, have the roles you created for event pre-COVID changed post-COVID? 82% unsurprisingly said, oh yes, very much.
Definitely. And I'd like to talk to those people who said no, or I wish I knew how.
I know. How is that possible?
Exactly. I wish I knew how it means, like, and means to me, that's why we try to put that one in there, is that, you have the need, but don't think you have the resources. Goes back to that communication piece. Ask your fellow colleagues. There's tons of spreadsheets out there that people have created that compare and contrast. But most importantly, if you think you need something, just ask, call up Justin and his crew and say, hey, I think I need this. What roles do you think I need on my team to make this a successful process? Just ask. 100. And then maybe ask a few of them, and you'll get different information back from them, and then you create your own process from that. So start somewhere, because nowadays, I love the post-COVID term. Post-COVID, everything is collaboration. We should never think about competition anymore. We need to think about, this tech company is my partner in this journey to a successful event, right? And they work now for me. Maybe I need something else as a part of my tech stack. Maybe I don't, but it has to be collaborative. That means you have to talk, and everyone's views should be at the table.
100%. Next poll. Do you have an event technologist on your staff? Please go over to the polls and let us know.
I can't wait to hear this one. I can't wait to hear this one.
It's going to be good. We can definitely build on this for 1 second as well. I'll ask you this question. Tess, as an event technologist, how do you determine whether you should be hands-on versus giving the customer more autonomy? How do you actually gauge who's capable of what leading into the event?
And I'm glad you asked that question, because, again, pre-COVID, you would know in your mind, these people on my team have these set of skill sets, or have a tendency to lean towards liking tech, or someone just can't stand it, right? If you will. But when COVID happened, that all changed. Everyone went out and got their DES. Everyone went out and started learning more about, producing and take people on taking what I call reskilling or upskilling, if you will. So I think the first thing is you need to look at what skill sets you have in place on your teams, and then look at how you can give them the opportunities with the process. So we decided on how we're going to define the roles, hopefully, per se, right? And then look at what skill sets go along with it and give people opportunities. But I think the most important, Justin, is don't be afraid to fail. That's the thing I love about technology the most. Tech doesn't work 100% of the time, right? There's always can be something that can be tweaked, something that can be changed. And if something goes, oops, and then there's a new update, that means they possibly have fixed that, right? Well, why can't we take that the same when we're building our teams and we're building our relationships as well? So how can we say, it's okay to fail. Let me let you try this for a while. Let me see how this can go for a minute, as opposed to saying, you know what, I need this to be perfect the first time out the gate.
Yeah, give yourself breathing room and set expectations even for yourself about how the event is going to go from start to finish. Janice says, my company is just forming, but I'm learning so much about this and having a technologist role within the company. So Janice, great to hear that. A quick reflection on the last poll. Do you have an event technologist on your staff? 45%, the majority says, no, what is an event technologist? I think, at least I could say from the Blue Jeans point of view, we've been doing webinars around the clock since the pandemic happened. And I know Maggie has had her hands full for sure organizing these things. So what do you say, Tess, to the folks that don't have one out there?
Oh, sure, no problem. Let's pause for a second. So what is Maggie's title versus what Maggie did as related to those?
I can't speak for Maggie and I don't remember her title. Go ahead.
I'm going to come on. Hi, everyone.
Thank you, Maggie.
So, yeah, of course. I started out actually as a field marketing specialist. So I was actually doing live events and I was helping the sales team. So once the pandemic hit, we switched to webinars and I've kind of taken it on as like my project and my thing. And I love it, but it definitely was a shift from going from doing the logistics, right, and figuring out the process to doing live events to now what is the process for this event technology. And Justin being the product marketing expert for our Blue Jeans events, which we're on, we've had to work super close together and I have had to dive super deep into our product. And I feel like I could hop on sales calls and answer weird, unique questions about the product that I wouldn't be able to do when I was just doing events.
Yeah, so that's perfect. And that's why I was trying to push that envelope a little bit. It goes to exactly what I said. What roles did you used to have pre-COVID? And then what has come up now that the nature of our lives have shifted and changed, that people's other skill sets can come out differently. And it doesn't matter. If she was a field marketer, then she had to shift and change. She didn't have a choice. She just had to in some form or fashion. And then maybe someone on her team is a field marketer, not as affinity with tech, but that doesn't mean they can't work on the content side. So Justin, the way that I kind of compartmentalize things in a sense is it's always event planning and it's event execution. There's a thin line between the two, but there's two. There's content also, right? And there's executing the content. Where are you going to put that content? Again, in terms of real estate. So if that person on her team doesn't have affinity for tech, maybe they want to stay on the content side and help with what that piece is, then hand it off to someone like Maggie to be able to kind of put it where it needs to be. So those roles can fall under what event technologist is. I think it's a very broad term. There are those of us in the industry with Value Plus Agency and others who've been pushing some of our leading organizations to define that, to create that role many years ago. And it's kind of been building up and it kind of blew up with COVID coming into play. And this person can be external or internal. It's someone who's looking at either creating your tech stack for you. That means, like we talked about, finding something that's good for you or not. Or someone who's internal who actually is working on that. They have in between maybe IT and marketing or IT and events. Preferably, my preference is that role should sit in the events department. That should be literally in the events department, and then that they can take quote unquote orders or take information and data and then work alongside the IT department to pull things together and make sure their events are good, right? Kind of similar to how a field marketer position came to be years ago.
Yeah. Super interesting. And yeah, I think it's been an interesting transition just for everybody. But I mean, yeah, Maggie and I work very, very closely together. And I think when you take a look at the marketing department, if the event technologist role has been built out of an extension of what used to be just field marketing, we've seen a similar thing happen in AV groups and IT groups that represent large 5,000 and 10,000 person organizations where their job might have been conference room management or network systems management, things like that. But then out of that, same thing came this extension of video production manager and event technologist type of a thing too. So it's been cool getting some kind of like title intelligence from our customers about what's happening in marketing and also what's happening on the IT side. Cool.
I know Steve had a question. I don't mind answering that if you want.
Go for it. Yep.
Okay. So Steve, thanks. Wonderful. So Steve said, how best can you scratch the itch of clients that want to make that personal connection they're used to making when appearing in front of a live audience? That's to me an interesting, because it's all determined on how you determine scratch that itch. I know they want to. They're always trying to be something they're not. It's almost like social media. When social came into play, people created personas, and people still create personas, right? So you can be who you want to, front facing, different than not, right? And that's going to continue to happen. But hopefully, since COVID has happened, we can humanize the experience more and drill into people's heads, Steve, that you're going to have to say what works best for them, right? So if I'm a visual person and an audio person, give me a platform or give me a situation where I can see myself, and then I can interact and talk, if you will, and then I can listen. I work really well that way. Give someone else who has to just look at type and copy that. Give them exactly what they need, but they're going to have to decide for themselves what that is. And again, to me, it still goes back to communication. You're going to have to ask them what they want, how they want it, and then try to balance that so then it doesn't itch as much. You put some kind of cure comb or something else on it, so it kind of patches it over.
Right. That's a good point. I think the beginning of what you said as well, that the be yourself part, don't be something that you're not, is going to go a long way, whether you're on stage in person or virtually. One thing I've noticed since we've been ramping up these webinars at Blue Jeans, it really is hard to replicate 100% of the in-person. It is. However, the interactivity tools lately, like we've always marketed them, they're fantastic, but it does create this pretty organized relationship with the audience if you have to be on stage and speaking. Because think about the way Tess and I have been talking today. It'd be really hard if Tess and I were on a stage someplace and we were just kind of rapid fire taking questions from the audience. It can be done, but right now it's kind of like we had this prepared dialogue already set up, but these questions that come in a pretty organized fashion in the dialogue box, it takes us down these really cool different roadways that we can choose to answer along the way. And so even though we're not face to face, we are virtual, there's still there are some interesting aspects I think that you still get from virtual. So,
great.
Let's see here.
Is it I also think that if people don't get real with what other people want, they're gonna miss the boat. Simple. Because everyone's tired of it. That's why simply when we decided to do this, I was like, no PowerPoint slides. I don't want that. The audience is not going to get anything from that. They're tired of that. Let's just talk. Just like we would if we were at an event. We'd walk up to you guys and say, hi, and then have a conversation. And keep it simple.
It's a great point. The podcast style that you're used to as well. I mean, there's a huge appetite for that right now. We did a market survey as well a couple of weeks ago, and we found a really interesting response from event professionals about their expectations of a virtual event experience. And I think because a lot of people are isolated and we're socially distanced and we can't go to the office anymore, there is this major craving to be in a social atmosphere which allows networking opportunities. So networking opportunities, it works a couple of different ways. It's not just us on stage speaking with the audience. The audience has the chance to interact among themselves, among peers in their industry. And people don't get that in person anymore. And so it was kind of an interesting market feedback about what people are looking for. So
yeah, and I'm interested if you share that with me too as well. I think these conversations are necessary for us to continue to have. I really appreciate you having me on and being able to talk to the audience. I really enjoy using the platform. I really enjoy experiencing Blue Jeans in different ways because, I've experienced it in various different products that you have. But I think if we don't choose to come to events like this, short, sweet, to the point, and test it out ourselves, and not having to wait for just a demo all the time, just play with it, right, while you're in it, then you're not going to see what your user is going to be like when they come into it. And then you can't build the partnerships that you want to with the event tech companies the right way, because then you're going to be asking something different than what they can actually, what they, they're going to give you what you ask for versus what you need. Because everyone can say, I want something to engage and I want to do polls, but how many people do polls out there? Over 250, well over. It's the how.
very much. I think with that we'll tie a bow around this, Tess. A great wrap up of this, and we appreciate so much you being here. Thank you so much.
Yep. Wow. Have a
Yes.
great
Thank you, Tess. Thank you, Justin. Just a reminder, everyone, I will send you the recording. And if you have any other questions for Tess, Justin, or myself, please just reply to that email and we'll make sure we get them answered. All right. Have a great rest of your day.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank